Welcome back to the I Am Passionate podcast. It's your host, Jaren Smith, and I hope you all are having a great day today. And so I'm back with another episode this week. It's been a while since I've had two episodes in the same week, let alone like a 2 day span. But I'm back with another sports episode, and guess what? It's not football, it's baseball. I'm going to try to, kind of honor myself and stick through this journey on my goal from becoming a true casual to, let's just say, an average fan for now. And, today's, opening night of the MLB season. And the goal, like I just mentioned, it's to continue my journey to becoming at least just an average fan. And so I'm going to set up a few rules and guidelines for myself. The first rule, which is not exactly related to speaking about baseball, it's more so from a podcast perspective. I am not going to do video podcasts for baseball until I have a better understanding of baseball. By that, I mean a lot of the things you're going to hear me talk about are kind of vague descriptions. They're not going to be super technical. They're not going to be as advanced because there's a few people in my life that could probably speak baseball like I could speak football. And clearly, I am not at that point just yet. And I feel like part of the enjoyment would be to see me go from, episode one being the World Baseball Classic, episode two being today. And so then, let's just say episode 20, because the baseball is a very long season, I could, start sounding like, okay, Jaren knows what he's talking about a little bit. Second rule, I'm not going to keep count of my win loss record like I do with football. I'm more so going to attempt to keep track of observations I make with the games that I watch. Second, most of the predictions that I make will be Cubs or Sox related and then expand upon that. Um, and I will at least attempt to keep track of, maybe across a week because I understand that, a lot of, you're gonna have like a like in season series, and so like a lot of the games, like you're gonna they're gonna like the same teams are gonna play like three times, obviously. Um, and so like for today's episode, I'm not covering the entire series. My goal is to kind of look at, the first matchup between these teams. Who do I think is going to win at least the first matchup? And then when I make the following episode, I can recap and say, oh, this team won the series against that team. That is my goal. And, at the start, I'm not going to preview every single game. I'm not going to do that. I think what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to pick a few games, every week, look into them the best way I can. And, as my confidence grows and my understanding grows, I'll start talking about more and more teams. I'll get more and more in depth. And then lastly, I'm doing some research. I'm doing the best research that I can just to bring up talking points, just so that, this episode is not a 2 minute episode. But that's kind of really all I have to preface this with. I will kind of, dive into the episode. But before I do that, let me know your favorite baseball team down below. And yeah, you better not be a bandwagon. I'm not claiming the Sox or the Cubs. I'm just going to claim as like, supporting either team. Um, but I would also love to go to a game, someday. I've been to two football games. I went to a Bears game when I was like 9, maybe 10 years old, and I went to my first Ravens game when for my 21st birthday. I've been to one NBA game. It was Derrick Rose was still on the Bulls, and this was, I think, like when he came back from like the his first major knee injury, but like then he had another one, and so yeah, I remember they're playing the Bucks, and so yeah, that's pretty much, kind of that. I would love to go to a game someday. And so, hey, maybe I'll find my way to a Cubs game or a Sox game. We will see. We will see. So, the first game I'm talking about is easily the opening night game, the Yankees versus the Giants, where, in some of my research, I looked at last year's, regular season record for all the teams that I'm going to talk about. And yes, I'm not going to talk about every team equally. I'm kind of just going off of, the what caught my eye, because the reason why it's going to be hard to talk about every team equally at the start is simply just because, yeah, like this is just meant to be basics. The Yankees' regular season record was 94-68 last year. Pretty good, comparing, to other teams, last year. And while the 2025, Giants regular season record was 81-81, perfect 500, which I kind of find that crazy in baseball. With you have as many games as you do, because 81, 81, that's 162, to have go perfectly 500. I imagine that's either A, not very common, or B, more common than I would think. But the Yankees, they were a playoff team last year. They lost to the Toronto Blue Jays in the ALDS 3-1. I probably sounded really weird saying that. um, I don't really have much to say about the Giants. I kind of looked at their record over the past couple of years, and they kind of were floating around that about 500 range. I'm going to pick the Yankees to win this game by a decent margin. I noticed that this game it will also have the option to stream this game on Netflix. I'm not 100% sure if Netflix is the sole option because, like, thinking about football the last couple years, like on Christmas Day games are typically on Netflix. So I'm not sure if this is going to be the MLB equivalent of how, like, the NFL would do Christmas Day games. But my gut is telling me that this game is going to be a game that people might not watch the entire thing. It might be a mix of the Yankees are just kicking the Giants' butt, or Netflix streaming with baseball, and baseball, being a very popular sport, it might not be suited very well for baseball. I'm not sure, but anyone, if this has been done before, you'll have to let me know down below in the comments if watching baseball games through Netflix is even an enjoyable experience. Moving on to the White Sox versus the Brewers. The White Sox record was 20. The White Sox record in 2025. My mistake. They were 60 and 102. Kevin, I'm not trying to trash your White Sox. I'm really not. So please do not be in the comments yelling at me because I am just trying to be as objective as I possibly can. And I do know that the Brewers record last season was 97 and 65. They had a pretty good season last year. And, kind of some of the research I was doing, I understand that, both teams have kind of made some moves. And the White Sox, from what I understand and what I kind of read, it looks like, they've made some decent moves that, they could, basically improve. Because I know the last 3 years, they've had a lot of losses. And, like, I know that as someone who is not a major baseball fan at this point in time. And also to kind of describe my relationship with baseball up until this point, I always had the thought that if I was to be there in person at a game, I would enjoy it 10 times more than watching it on TV. Now, in last season, I watched, quite a few games on TV, quite a few for my standards, and I enjoyed it. I really did. Um, Now, is it because of who I was watching it with? I think that was a decent portion of it, but I think for looking at the game of itself and also what I wanted with my life, I was enjoying it from that regard. Yeah, but the White Sox, they're trying to have a winning record for the first time since 2021, which is also the last time they made the playoffs. Well, we'll see if like they play Thursdays. They play tomorrow. Because at the time I'm recording this, it is 3:36 on Wednesday. Um, and so yeah, the also some of you are going to probably yell at me in the comments, but the Brewers also were a playoff team last year. They beat the Cubs in the NLDS 3-2. But I'm gonna pick the Brewers to win this game. I think this game would be better than expected. I think most people are probably going to. This is gonna be one of those games where, unless you live in Chicago or Milwaukee, you're probably not gonna tune into the game because most people are probably going to anticipate this game being a blowout. That's just my guess. I don't think it's gonna quite be, like, crazy lopsided. I think it might. I think it'd be more interesting than what people are probably expecting. Moving on to the Nationals versus the Cubs. The Nationals record last year was 66 and 96, and the Cubs record last year was 92 and 70. The Cubs, like I mentioned, they were the team I watched the most last year. If I had to place a number on the amount of games I think I watched last year, um, I'd say maybe 10 to 15 games, give or take. Um, I'd always ask, with the people that I knew that were into baseball, like, if there were certain games today. And apparently sometimes there was, and I just did not know it. I was very misinformed. But this year, the goal is to be as informed as possible in regards to baseball. And also with all the stuff I was looking for online, trying to do research to understand these teams a little bit better. The Cubs are a favorite to win, not just, opening day, but also like the series against the Nationals. Um, Based off of what I saw last year, I don't see why, like, not. I understand the team's probably a little bit different this year compared to last year, but um I think the Cubs should be favorites. And also for, you Cubs fans, let me know down below your thoughts on PCA's, contract extension. I think it was like 6 years, $115 million. Wish I had $115 million. But I'm gonna pick the Cubs to win this game pretty convincingly. I would not be surprised if I see a lot of Cubs fans that I know personally talking online, and know that is not a shot at anyone specifically. I also genuinely know a lot of Cubs fans, and also a lot of the people that I've worked with past and present are also Cubs fans. Um, Moving on to the Diamondbacks versus the Dodgers. Um, the Diamondbacks record last year was 80 and 82, while the Dodgers were 93 and 69. The Dodgers won the World Series last year. And I remember when I was watching that game, which also it was game 7 against the Toronto Blue Jays. I, I just remember it being crazy. I don't think I ended up watching the entire thing. I think I watched more so like probably from the 5th inning to the end of the game, give or take. Um, yeah, I just remember it being crazy. It like I did not expect the Dodgers to actually win that game. I thought the Toronto Blue Jays were gonna um, take that one. But I'm gonna pick the Dodgers to win this game pretty convincingly. I imagine they're probably the favorites, to win this game, and let alone probably their series. And moving on to the final game I'm going to talk about today, we have the Athletics versus the Blue Jays. I'm pretty sure, like, also, this is, I'm going to type this, into my phone right now. I'm pretty sure the Athletics are the Oakland Athletics, um, which, I don't know why at the moment I'm tweaking. Yes, they are. On Monday, they had a spring training game against the White Sox, which they won 10-9. And the Athletics against the Dodgers in a spring training game last Saturday, it's tied 5-5. Okay, so my apologies for that little blunder. Uh, and then the Blue Jays, they were 94 and 68. And like I was kind of talking about with the Diamondbacks versus Dodgers, like when I was referring to the World Series game from last year, game 7, I thought the Blue Jays were going to end up winning, that game. I remember the 2 outs that the Dodgers got to put the game into extras. There was a player running toward base, running toward home plate, which the guy who basically ended up getting the out. I'm not sure if it was like I can't think of the name of the position right now. I can't think of the name of the specific player, but um, yeah, I just remember like dang, like I was thinking in live time, like before they even showed any replays. I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, oh, yeah, he got it, like he's there, like Toronto, they're about to win this game. But when they showed the replay, it was super close. And then they got the out. I think it was, I guess if you want to call it center field, where whoever on the Dodgers caught the out and he basically ran over his own player, to force the game in the extras. And basically, after going into the extras, they were able to, get the win 5-4, as all of you baseball fans know. But in the outcome of, the opening day games, I think the Blue Jays will win this game probably by a few runs. Um, I'm not sure what a lot of these teams, like the roster construction, is currently like looking like, and so I'm sure that by the time I'm ready to make my next episode, I'm gonna have at least a little bit of an understanding that like, okay, these teams are completely different than they were just one season ago, and so yeah, so I'm aware that some of my predictions are very vague. They're very probably naive, but that's okay. That's kind of the goal, is to just start basic and then expand upon that. And really, I just have one other thing to talk. Actually, I've got two. I'm going to try, this is not even on my script. I'm going to try to name as many baseball players as I can off the top of my head. Um Paul Skeens, Fernando Tatis. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm pretty sure he's on like the Pittsburgh Pirates. Um, you have Shohei Otani. Yeah, I think Aaron Judge. I think that'd be 4 Cubs players. I could think of PCA being 5, Seiya Suzuki. That's 6. I'm sure there's probably a few other players I could probably name. Just literally off the top of my head, I can think of 6 players off the top of my head. It'd be more accurate to say I could probably name players who were playing like a decade ago, and even then, that list is not very big either. Is there any other people across baseball that I can name, and they're just not coming to mind right now? Um, no, I don't think so. I'm just gonna start with those 6 for now, and in the next episode, I might be able to expand upon that list. And also, the other thing about why, again, I want to explain why I'm trying to get into baseball. I know that, for my job and with what I do, baseball season, like for high schools, are around the corner. And I think by watching the pros, it might be able to help me when it comes to doing what I do to become, more successful because my goal is to make it in the world of sports journalism. But I want to thank you all for listening to this episode of the I Am Passionate podcast. It's your host, Jaren Smith, and I'll see you all next time.